It's 100% possible that you can live a life that you enjoy, where you have money to do things, where you have time to do the things that you want to do, and where you're not constantly wondering what would life be like if things had been different. Things can be different, and you can make them different. If you don't believe that you can make things different, then you have a mindset problem. If you do believe that things can be different, then you have a skill set problem. Or you just haven't put in enough time and effort to actually allow your world to change around you. And I know this because 5 years ago, I was in a situation where I wasn't content with where my life was, where it was headed. And so I made a decision to stop what I was doing and start doing something else. Now here I am, my goal is to offer you assistance with doing the same thing. I'm very regularly asked, how does one navigate the world where everything is against us? You know, the government's against us, the economy's against us, we're all slaves. And this video is the answer to that, basically. If you're asking the question, how do I live in this world where I'm a slave? That's the wrong question. And I'll tell you why it's the wrong question. Because if you believe you're a slave, you are a slave. There's a lot of people that believe they have to do jobs because they have to get the money, because they have to do this or they have to do that. Those are all beliefs. And I understand that there's going to be kickback for me saying that. Anytime I talk about this in the past, people get quite triggered and they say that I'm out of touch with reality and such things. If you believe that, it's okay. Don't watch any further because this won't be helpful to you. Now, if you're still here, we need to understand that when we're saying things like, oh, it's all the government's fault. If we blame our circumstances on the outside world, we have a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset means that things are the way they are and I can't do anything about it. That's not true. You can believe it to be true, in which case that's probably going to be your reality. Now, a growth mindset, on the other hand, is where we see things for what they are. So I don't for a second deny that the economic situation in the world is pretty terrible. There is all sorts of inequality. There's all sorts of hardship. There's all sorts of this and that. That's all true. Does that help me get to where I want to get? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Because for me, it doesn't help to believe that everything is everyone else's fault. Because that puts me in a position where I can't do anything about it. Now, if I have a growth mindset, on the other hand, that means that I can change my circumstance over a long enough time frame. And if I believe that, I'm going to take the steps and the actions required to help me shift out of where I currently am. And that's exactly what I did 5 years ago. I started taking steps. I started with action and I failed, and I was not hopeful for a lot of that journey. But that's just part of the process. Because what happens when you start to believe you can do things, you'll start trying to do things. And then you'll get slapped in the face and you'll feel like you moved one step forward and now you're 2 steps back. And then you find yourself back in that fixed mindset again. And in my experience, even though I've come so far from where I was, I still shift into a fixed mindset from time to time. But the opportunity is in each moment to revert back to a growth mindset. And when you're in a growth mindset, you don't ask questions like, how do I live in a world where I'm a slave? Because you don't see that as a fixed trait of your existence. When you blame your circumstances on the outer world, you're saying that you don't have the potential within you to change things. So when I really started to make a change for myself, it was 2018. I was living in Vancouver and I was walking to work one day. And I had this distinct moment where I realized, I even remember where I was. I was on 16th and Renfrew. And I thought to myself, I could live this life for the next 5 years or so, and it would be fine. I was working as a server in a bar. I was making decent money, had a great social life. But I was just lacking fulfillment. I had this void within me. And I decided I kind of needed to just reset my life. I needed a complete overhaul. And that was the beginning of my journey of trying new things to create a new life for myself. A life that I didn't know what was going to be happening. Like I didn't know what was possible. I just knew I didn't want what I had. And so I needed to start taking action to shift out of that. And that was really scary. The first thing I did was I moved to a yoga center where I started living a different life. Prior to that, I had always lived, more or less in the city. I thought I was a city slicker. I loved big skylines. And now all of a sudden I was on this island with very limited signal. It had like 2 roads. And yeah, it was just very chill, completely different to what I was used to. And this is what opened me up to yoga and mindfulness, back in the day. And that was my first thing that I tried doing. So I set up a business as a yoga and meditation facilitator. I was doing workshops, I was doing talks, stuff like this. And I learned a whole lot in that process, and it was really difficult. And I did revert back to believing I couldn't have what I wanted because I failed in that business. I wasn't able to make enough money. Now, in hindsight, I can see how all of that ultimately has served me, because now I am in a situation where I am doing fulfilling work. I get paid for it. I have the time and flexibility to do what I want when I want. But it didn't come overnight. That was 6 years ago that began that journey. So with that little bit of context, we can talk now about skill and time scale. The reason that didn't work at the time was an issue with my skill set on one hand, but also I didn't have the grit or the willingness to push through the discomfort of having a failing business, because my current business failed for a long time, or at least it seemed that way. But as I stayed in the game and got to meet other people, I came to learn that this is actually a part of the process, which I didn't really know before. You see, often what people will do when they have a failed attempt at doing something is they'll revert back to the fixed mindset. They'll revert back to the belief that they are a slave, that they can't do what they want to do in this life, and that they have to go and do something that they don't want to do. And then the cycle repeats. You see, that fixed mindset is always trying to pull you back. So every time you find yourself in that mode where you're playing the victim, so to speak, I invite you to question your thoughts. Ask yourself, is it true? Is it true? Am I a slave? Have I done everything I can to, give value in the world, to have that reciprocated so that I can get time, so that I can get money, so that I can get, a schedule in my day that I enjoy? Because if that's what you want, you can have it. But you need to believe that you can have it. And if you believe that you can have it, but it's not happening, it's because you just haven't found the way yet. And you find the way by cultivating skills, by trying different things, by meeting different people, by pursuing different opportunities. And then the path starts to reveal itself, but it's not straightforward. It's never straightforward. Being a slave, I'm just using that as a term for the point of this video. It's a path that you see as a clear path. And so you do it because it's like, oh, well, if I apply for the job, I'll get the job and then they'll give me a salary every 2 weeks. And since you're watching this video, I know that you're not really interested in that. So we need to go back then to looking at where we're at, where we're going. When we see where we're at, we can identify some of the gaps that we might have in our skill set. We can cultivate skills. We can reflect upon what we've done in the past, what didn't work, and then we can iterate on it. I had many, many different variations of what I do now. It started off with making content that nobody watched. Then I went to making content for brands. That was quite successful. And then I moved into more of a mentorship space where I help other people to create the things that they want to create so that they can build the businesses that they want to build around those content creation strategies. But each step before that, all of the failed vlogs that I made that no one watched, all of the branding I did for companies, that was all giving me knowledge. It was allowing me to cultivate my skill set. And that's now what I share with other people. Your version of that is going to have its own unique flavor and twist. And that's the beauty of being a human. You've got your own path to carve. And within that beauty is also terror, because you don't know how beautiful it can be. You don't know how beautiful it's going to be. And so the mind might revert back to the old fixed mindset and be like, oh, it's going to be terrible. That's a fixed mindset speaking. A growth mindset says it's going to be great. I don't know when it's going to be great. Don't know how it's going to be great. But I believe that it will be great if I keep on persisting over a long enough time frame. There's a reason that most people don't do it, and it's because it's really difficult, it's really uncomfortable. Even when you're doing reasonably well, the fixed mindset always comes back in. Some days you just wake up and all of a sudden your mind wants to jump back to 10 years ago where you felt disempowered and felt like you couldn't do anything. And you just have to take a minute, recognize that, and then remember that that's not true. That's just one version of events. And if that's not the version of events that you want to be living, change it. You can change it. You don't need to wait until everything lines up outside, because that's not within your control. Like a while back, I said that inflation isn't the cause of your financial pain. And I'm not saying that inflation is not real. I'm not saying that inflation doesn't impact everybody's wealth. Of course it does. But focusing on that isn't going to change anything. That's just complaining. Like, you can make more money by providing more value, by taking up another job, by, doing something to generate revenue. That's actually within your control. And that's what people with a growth mindset do. People with a fixed mindset will sit and wait for inflation to go away and just complain about it until then. Does that make sense? Like, actually think about that. Like, your two options, one is to sit and complain and your situation probably gets worse. And the other is to acknowledge the shitty situation for what it is and then go do something about it. Like, try something else. And that's within your power today. So if you're someone who's looking to create a beautiful life for yourself and the people that you serve, there's a link in the description. You can book a free one-on-one consultation with me, and then we can take it from there and see how we can bring your vision to life. Have a good one.